Thank you. So this talk is about the insecurity in the Internet of Things, like how the smart home devices that you see, like how awfully vulnerable they are. How many of you have these kind of IoT devices at your home? Let's be honest. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So yeah, so I've done a good amount of research into like pretty much all different variety of IoT devices, especially into recently into smart home devices, so things like smart home automation hubs, light bulbs, thermostats, all those sort of devices. So my name is Aditya. I run a security firm called Atify, which specializes in IoT security and providing training on these kind of security issues. I've also spoken at a bunch of other conferences like Black Hat, DEF CON, and all of that. I've also written a couple of books, such as the recent one, which is IoT Hacker's Handbook, and one is coming up next month called the IoT Pen Testing Cookbook. Now, the agenda of this talk is to look into like each of the various aspects of IoT devices. So whenever we talk of IoT device, it is not just a single component. So unlike your typical web application security or network application security, IoT is much more complicated. I wouldn't say complicated, but consists of a lot many more components. So you have got firmware, you have got hardware, you have radio, you have the mobile and web stuff as well. And then you have the typical BLE, ZigBee, all those sort of protocols. So we are going to start with like some of the basics of IoT security. Then we'll look into some of the vulnerabilities in smart home devices. And then we'll also have a look at some of the demos, as well as one or two live demonstrations in this session. So the current problem with IoT security, so if you have not been involved with IoT security in the past, you might think that IoT is secure. How many of you here think that IoT is secure? Pretty good. So yeah, so IoT devices, because of like so many different components, that is the reason of one of the insecurity. So you've got like so many different things to handle, so that like if one of the component actually breaks, you have got the entire system being vulnerable. So if you talk of a smart home automation hub, if you have a firmware-based security issue, then your entire smart home device ecosystem is compromised. Also, there is the problem with supply chain. So whenever you manufacture devices, you have a lot of different companies or a lot of different components involved. So someone is buying the components, someone is assembling, someone is manufacturing your PCBs, and then you have the final QA and testing, and then the product ships to the market. So that also increases the possibility of having a backdoor in the products that you see in the retail shops. And that is also something extremely common with IoT devices. So a lot of devices have backdoors. Also, the reason, one of the other reasons is fragmentation. So since IoT is relatively new, a lot of companies are coming up with their own standards, own set of protocols, and that causes one of the biggest security issue, because there's no standardized approach to actually build an IoT device, right? So you have so many different protocols to choose from, and there's not enough research done on one single protocol. So you might end up using something which is lesser research, and that might have like security issue. We'll get into that. Also, one of the other interesting things is like if you go to Best Buy or even Fry's or whatever retail store you have, you pick up an IoT device, most likely that IoT device will be vulnerable. So yesterday I went to Best Buy over here, got like 5 medical devices. 3 of them were having like insecure BLE communication. So if someone is actually using that blood pressure monitor, I can just go near that, or even from a distance, I can launch up the BLE sniffing attack using Ubertooth or any other device and get to know his health vitals, right? It's as easy as that, all right? So yeah, so some of the recent vulnerabilities that we have seen. So this is one of the refrigerators which was connected to your Google account. And since the refrigerator was vulnerable, anyone could hack into it and then use that to send emails from your Google account. And this had like all sort of stupid security issues. Then this was, I guess, an Insteon smart home devices. So they were pretty much like all vulnerable, UART, insecure communication, replay-based attacks, all of that. Also, if you just go to showdown.io, how many of you here are familiar with showdown.io? Pretty much everyone. So if you go over there, look for smart home devices, things like dishwasher, refrigerators, or even search for the headers of a particular device that you're interested in, you'll end up finding a lot of insecure devices. So a quick exercise for you, just go to Showdown, search for port 1883, which is for MQTT, which is also one of the communication protocols which a lot of devices use, and you'll end up having like so many vulnerable devices, and you can just directly connect to them, read their entire messages, and even publish your own messages to control the smart home device. So someone actually found a truck parked somewhere using Showdown, and the credentials were extremely secure, admin, and he was able to log in and also move the truck, which was parked somewhere. And then recently, baby monitors have become like a really important thing in pretty much all the different households. And yeah, they're just like a specialized IP camera, but more vulnerable. So they have got like all these different sort of security issues. So if you just monitor the traffic, you figure out what URL is being used to access a particular live stream, you just iterate through the user IDs, you end up having like all the users live stream of the baby monitors. And you can also like play your own voices through the baby monitor and all of that. Then recently a dishwasher was also hacked. Anyone knows what vulnerability was in the dishwasher? So the dishwasher had a directory traversal vulnerability. So it was running an embedded web server, and that had the vulnerability. And from that, you can actually compromise the entire dishwasher, and from there pivot to like all the other devices on the network. So this is like also one of the more interesting things about IoT is because there are like so many devices on your network. If you compromise one of the device, you can actually end up having access to like all the other devices. So just like in an enterprise pen test, if you compromise one of the systems, you can then try to pivot to all the other systems or to the database or whatsoever. Right? So components of a smart home, like if you talk of a current day smart home, there are like a number of different components involved. So you've got light bulbs, which were like one of the more popular devices when IoT started. A lot of you might also be using things like Philips Hue or Belkin Vimo, which is like the two major manufacturers making all these smart home devices. So light bulbs, also there have been like a number of different persons doing like how do you build an entire home with Philips Hue. So 100% Philips Hue house. Which is not a good idea in my opinion. Then we have door locks, because people are not happy with the traditional kind of secure door locks if you like eliminate lock picking, but you just end up making them more vulnerable. So also like later on in today's session, we have like a demo on this door lock, which is by Quickset. And we'll see how easily you can go ahead and exploit it just by manipulating something in BLE. Then this is also one of the devices I bought from AliExpress and found having a number of different variations in the local fries in San Francisco. And this was using Wi-Fi and BLE, both of them insecure. Then a Zigbee smart home gateway. So Zigbee, a lot of people actually think that Zigbee is extremely secure if they have not looked a lot deep into it. But it turns out that Zigbee is not so secure. We'll get to see. And then a coffee maker. So this is like quite interesting. A lot of homes as well as offices have this Wi-Fi connected coffee machine, which also has BLE. And yeah, this is also something that we used in one of our enterprise pen tests to compromise the entire network. We'll get to see. Yeah. So yeah, what is a smart home? So pretty much you have automated your entire home operations. So like you have automated the temperature control, the light bulbs, the door locks. You also kind of monitor how much water you're drinking. You have ridiculous things like smart mirror. So there's something called smart mirror as well. So you look yourself in the mirror. If you look good, you just tap the button on your phone and the smart mirror will click a picture of you. So, and then you have like these smart toys for babies, smart TVs, pretty much everyone has, microwave and all of that. And they are like in the like because you're introducing like so many different devices, there is a huge amount of risk that you're introducing in your network. So even if, like I mentioned, if one of the device gets compromised, so let's say your coffee machine or your smart switch actually ends up having a vulnerability in, let's say, Bluetooth, which can be remotely exploited, someone can get access to that particular device, get the Wi-Fi credentials, and then jump to the other devices, or maybe also make a worm over Zigbee. So there were a bunch of researchers who actually exploited one of the Zigbee devices, like created a Zigbee worm, and since Zigbee is a mesh network, it automatically spreads to everyone in its vicinity. So if there is a good neighborhood with a number of homes using Zigbee devices, if one of the homes gets compromised, you end up infecting like 50 of those homes, all the Zigbee devices. So yeah, so this is what I was mentioning about the coffee machine. So it was using both BLE and Wi-Fi, and for some reason, I don't know why, it was transmitting the Wi-Fi credentials over BLE. And this is also one of the things that you'll find in a lot of other devices. Like I think one of the other popular smart plugs called Comfy also has the same vulnerability. So there's no particular reason why it does that, but it keeps on emitting the Wi-Fi credentials for that particular network which it is connected with. So the typical smart home device, it has both Wi-Fi and BLE in these kind of devices so that you can operate them over Wi-Fi as well as over Bluetooth. And you have like two really good attack vectors. So yeah, so sniff the credentials using Ubertooth, get the Wi-Fi credentials, and end up being on that particular Wi-Fi. Also, this is like one of the reviews of a thermostat which someone wrote. Basically, what he is saying is he was in a relationship, they were using a thermostat, and then they broke up. He moved to another place, but he still had control over that thermostat. So now whenever he does not feel happy, he just makes it like extremely cold or extremely hot. So yeah. So doesn't everyone want to wake up at 7 a.m. to a 40-degree house? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, now let's get a bit more technical. So whenever you take an IoT device, or whenever I actually look at any IoT device, this is the approach that I follow. So the very first thing that I do is look at all the different components involved in that IoT device architecture. Because there are like so many different components and their interconnection, there is like more than 10 entry points for any given IoT solution that you take. So this is like a typical smart home attack surface. So you have got the gateway, you have got the cloud dashboard, you have got the individual devices and sensors, and then finally you have the mobile application. Plus you have the interconnectivity between all these different components. So you can either attack the firmware on the IoT gateway, you can either attack the hardware on the IoT gateway, you can attack the web communication, you can attack the mobile application, reverse engineer it, you can exploit the individual devices, you can attack BLE, Zigbee, 6LoWPAN, whatever protocol it is using. So just by this particular attack surface map, you can pretty much imagine how big of an attack surface any given IoT device has. So if you consider having an IoT device in your home, make sure that it's extremely well researched so that there are like no public vulnerabilities at least. Yeah. So now let's start with hardware. So the very first thing that you look into a hardware is this thing called FCC ID. And this is what all of the devices which are being sold in the States need to have if they operate or if they have any kind of radio emission, so that they are certified to not cause a lot of interference to other radio devices around it. So if you look at the back of any IoT device, they would be having an FCC ID unless like they are coming from China. In that case, like most of the devices won't have unless they are like white labeled and then sold to the like in US or Canada. So just from the FCC ID, you can pretty much look at the entire. How many of you have looked at an FCC ID of any device? Okay, few, nice. So if you look at the FCC ID of any device, what you end up having is the entire properties or the entire description of the device. So you end up having like what frequency is that particular device working on. So some of the devices might work on 433, some of the devices might work on 315 or so on. So you end up identifying the exact radio frequency. And that is like a critical piece of the puzzle, because once you identify that, you can actually go ahead and capture that particular radio communication, and then try attacks like replay. Apart from that, this is also one of the things I like doing even before buying the device, because it shows you the internal pictures of the device. And if you have the internal pictures of the device, you can look at like what different chips this particular device is using and what are the possible hardware entry points. We'll get to that. So from the data sheet, you figure out what chips it is, look at the manufacturer logos, figure out what is the exact model, and then look up at the individual data sheet of that chip. So that will tell you like what is this particular component meant for, what is the frequency it works on, if this is a flash chip from where you can actually dump firmware, what is the operating frequency, how much is the size, and so on. So this is one of the IP cameras I was assessing recently. So the typical procedure of looking at any IoT device is open up the hardware and look for all the possible entry points. So you might have like a number of different ports, both internal and external. So this is like also one of the vulnerabilities I have found in like most of the highly secure devices. So I was pen testing a smart meeting room solution, and they had like an external peripheral access. And if you just plug in a keyboard, hit Control X, you jump out of that kiosk mode, and then you have like full access. And since everything was running as root, you can pretty much do anything. So yeah, look for all the different interfaces, both external and internal, things like UART, SPI, I2C, which can be extremely useful for hardware pen testing. Figure out how you can interact with the device. There are specific set of hardwares that you can use. So if you have heard of bus pirate, you can actually use that to interact with the hardware communication protocol. And once you do that, in most of the cases, you will end up having an unauthenticated root shell. So yeah, so UART is the first thing that you'll exploit. So this is a TP-Link device. And if you look at the, I guess the right one, you'll also see the kind of hardware protection they are trying to do. So they are trying to hide the UART ports, because I guess one of the team leads said that to their developers or engineers to hide the UART ports. So they end up like placing a kind of glue over the ports, but still you can see like this is a UART port because you can see the holes, right? So this is not so good protection. So yeah, so this IP camera, so recently started working on it, and I also told one of my team members to actually look at the thick client, which is the Windows application in this case, and we found a buffer overflow in just one single day. So if you just place like a really long query or really long password value, it ends up crashing, and you will figure out that it is an exploitable buffer overflow. So yeah, so if you are coming from a software background, IoT exploitation is not that tough, because that is like one of the reasons a lot of people don't do IoT security research, because they come from a software world. So yeah. So it connects to a server at China and also a buffer overflow. The next thing that you'll do is look at these 8-legged chips, which are mostly the SPI flash chips, like you have over here. Okay. So if you look at the chip in focus over there, where you have the connector in the next picture, what you can do is you can simply connect this clip to that particular chip and run a script called spiflash.py, which ends up dumping the entire firmware of the device. And once you have the firmware, you can run tools like binwalk to actually extract the entire file system. And from there, you can pretty much look at the individual binaries, exploit them, and so on. So yeah. So this is like a really critical piece whenever you look at any IoT device, which is dumping firmware. So no matter what device it is, just get an SOIC clip, which is the SOIC8 clip attached to it, and then dumping firmware is not that difficult. The next attack vector that we use is called JTAG, which is something that a lot of manufacturers use for debugging devices. So what we did in this case is we figured out that this was using an STM32 chip. So you go up online, look for the STM32 data sheet, you figure out that this is how the entire chip looks like, and then you look for where exactly are the JTAG pinouts. Now JTAG is something which is like extremely powerful. If you can connect over JTAG, you can even manipulate the running processes. So in some of the devices, like in some of the highly secure devices, like thermostats by some big companies and all of that, what we find is if you are able to get UART access, you'll have a login prompt. And that is typically what we bypass using JTAG. So you get JTAG access, you attach to the UART process, and then you manipulate the registers to bypass the login prompt. So yeah. And some of the devices like Wink Hub, which is like one of the other popular devices, you find them like straight away mentioning that these are the JTAG ports, these are the UART ports, and so on. Yeah. So like you can see in the bottom picture, all you need to do is dump underscore image, and you have dumped the entire firmware from the device. And even you get GDB access and all of that. Right. Now, looking at firmware, so the hardware part is mostly to get access to the firmware or to place things like GDB servers so you can access it in a much more better fashion. Now, once you have the firmware, you can pretty much look for all the different things. Like you can look for hard-coded credentials, private keys, passwords, configuration files, all of that. And one of the other things that, yeah, so if you look at the firmware, you can look at like a lot of different backdoors, which you'll find in a present-day smart home devices. A lot of command injection-based vulnerabilities, even vulnerabilities in firmware signing. So this is by Belkin Vimo, which was thought to be pretty secure because they had things like firmware signing and all of that. But when someone actually sniffed the connection, it was found that it also distributes the firmware signing key along with the firmware download. So yeah. So you just sniff the connection, get the firmware signing key, put your own malicious firmware, sign it, and then the device will think that this is like a really trusted firmware. Then the other thing that you can look for is the mobile app. So if you look at, let's see if I can, yeah. Additional, yeah. So I have a mobile application over here called Smart Wi-Fi. For some reason, the keyboard and mouse is a bit slow. OK, perfect. So if you simply run tools like, let's say, JADX, which is for mobile application decompiling, and run it on smartwifi.apk. So this is a mobile application for a smart switch. And all we are doing is just decompiling it in order to look at the source code. So once it is decompiled, let's go to Hangzhou ZX. And there are like two useful files or just one useful file called preferencesutil.java. So let's look at that. And if you look at the very first thing, it has this firmware download URL. So all you need to do in this case is do a wget of this firmware download, and you'll be able to have the entire firmware. Or since it is over HTTP, you can just intercept the connection, and while it is looking for a new firmware, place your own malicious firmware, and then you'll have a smart switch which has a backdoor which you can operate from anywhere. Right. Also, some of the other interesting things with this particular application, if let's say we unzip this, smartwifi.apk, and look at one of the native libraries, which in this case is a ARM library. And if you simply run strings on this and grep for AES, you'll figure out that this is a really secure device using AES encryption. But the AES encryption key is also present inside the same library. So like in this case, I actually knew that it was FDSL because I like reversed it earlier using IDA. But it's as simple as looking at where encrypt data and decrypt data, both of them refer to. So they refer to a single string, and this is the string. So you capture the communication, you figure out that this is the AES key, you decrypt it, and then you can modify the connection, encrypt it using AES again, and then when you transmit, you will be able to have control of the smart switch. So let's see if we can. So this is another medical device which one of the guy called Billy Rios actually found. So this was also pretty secure, used encryption. The password was in the mobile application. The password in this case was Bob the Builder for all your sensitive health information security. Then this eyes on IP camera or baby monitor. Reverse engineer the iOS application, you get a credential which is root and stem root, which was not actually meant to be there. And this was meant for backdoor access. So if you simply telnet into the device, use that credential, you have like a full root access of any baby monitor. Yeah. Now, some of the other vulnerabilities is like in the teddy bear, where it was using an insecure communication or insecure database configuration. So one of the researchers actually found the Mongo database, and since the credential was not that secure, he was able to log into it and figure out the entire user database and all their like information, emails and all of that. And billboard hacking is also like using default credentials. So default credential is one of the other security issues that most of the IoT devices suffer because they also don't allow users to change configuration. So if you talk of Philips Hue or if you talk of other popular IoT devices, they don't actually allow users to change the credential which the device uses. So it becomes like a matter of like brute forcing with some of the passwords and you get access. So this was one of the earlier things that I was mentioning called MQTT. So this is what a lot of devices like your smart home devices, your light bulbs, even a lot of Facebook applications like Facebook Messenger and all of it use. So this is like a publish and subscribe model for MQTT if you're not familiar with it. So someone actually publishes and the other end devices subscribe to it. So based on what message is being published, the subscriber will get that message and take action on it. So in case of a smart home ecosystem, the sensor will actually publish that the temperature is currently like 80 degrees, so turn it down to let's say 67, right? But what if you can actually subscribe to all those messages, or you can even publish to all those messages? So this is what I found using Shodan. So a number of smart homes, a similar vulnerability, like I guess there were like 200 in like California itself. So all you do is subscribe to all the messages, figure out what kind of messages are being published. You figure out that this is the message content, and now you can just publish to that particular host, and you end up having control of that particular smart home because there was an unauthenticated MQTT instance, right? Then some other kind of radio vulnerabilities. So using FCC ID, you find the frequency. Then you figure out like where exactly it is being transmitted using things like GNU radio. So in this case, it was a weather station which someone was using at their home. It transmitted over 433.947. So it transmits data in a burst of like every 12 seconds. So you'll see like sudden spikes at every 12 seconds. So using this tool called GQRX, you can actually figure out what is the exact frequency. And as you can see in the below waterfall view, like there are these bursts of data. And once you know that, all you need to do is have a basic digital signal processing knowledge on how to convert this data to, how to convert this raw radio packet to actual data. And what you end up having is waves like this or signals like this. And if you look more into it, it is an on-off keying, and you can convert those signals to binary zeros and ones. And just by analyzing that, you'll be able to figure out that this is how it is transmitting temperature, this is how it is transmitting humidity, and so on. And once you know that this is what it is transmitting, you can re-encode that and send it again, and you'll have your thermostat behave in that particular way. And this is a similar vulnerability in a garage door opener. Actually, this was even more simple. So this was by Insteon. And all you need to do is just capture and replay. So you'll have your garage door open. Yeah, pretty much extremely easy. Then one of the other most common communication protocol is called BLE, which is Bluetooth Low Energy, extremely different than Bluetooth, the typical Bluetooth. But all your radio communication attacks will work. So you'll have sniffing, excuse me. So you'll have sniffing, jamming, replay, all of that. And you can use tools like Ubertooth to actually sniff the traffic. Yeah, so you can use tools like Ubertooth to sniff the traffic, figure out which values are being written on the device. So let's say this is in fact a smart lock. So if I lock this device or unlock this device using my smartphone, I can capture that particular traffic, figure out what actual values are being written on this device. And once you figure that out, you can actually write your own values. So let me just show you a quick demo, given that it works. And the only device that I'm using in this case, since I know the values that needs to be written, is this BLE dongle, which is like a $3 or $4 BLE dongle. So the very first thing that you need to do whenever you attack a BLE device is to do a LE scan, which will scan for like all the Bluetooth devices around you. So you can see that there are a number of instances of padlock. Let's try to copy this. And once you know the Bluetooth address, yeah, like I mentioned, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So 20 C3 8F D6 EC FA. So let's see if we can actually connect. So once you have connected, all you need to do is do a char write request 0x002D, which is the value or the handle where the password gets written. So this is like a really secure device. 678. And it asks for your password first, which it transmits in clear text over BLE, and then it transmits the unlock value. And if you look, the lock now gets unlocked, right? Just so that, just because you know the address of this device, which you can find for any BLE devices around you, and you know that this is this particular device and model, and you can just, yeah, unlock this. Now, wasn't this easier than lock picking? So the similar attack you can perform on light bulbs. Yeah. I'll just try to, yeah. So in this case, it was actually writing the RGB values to the target device. I'm usually not this slow with computers. It's just the trackpad. Yeah. So yeah. So if you look at the Wireshark packet capture, which we did using Ubertooth, you figure out that it is writing these values to a specific handle, right? And once you figure out that this handle is like 0x0012, and then you can simply write your own values. Like in this case, it's simply turning it red, green, and blue. So all of these are like RGB values. So simply modify it, and you'll have this as red and green and blue. Let me skip a bit ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So once you have all of those values in place, all you need to do is simply run this script. So adapter.stop, and finally, we'll go ahead and run this script. And once you run this and have your BLE adapter plugged in, you'll find out that the bulb now starts changing color. So you can go to your friend's place, run this script on your Android phone, and you'll have a lot of fun. Now, breaking authentication is what we saw. You can also do the same if you are working with excuse me, things like RFID cards. So this is an office building. And this is a normal key card, works perfectly. And instead of using devices like Proxmark 3, which is like not extremely expensive, like 300, 400 bucks, you can build your own RFID cloner using Arduino and a RFID reader. So this is just like a RFID cloner script on Arduino. So reading the card, you place the card on the RFID reader, copy all of the data on your local system. And once you have it copied, you get like a blank RFID card, and you write that same data. And now you can unlock the door with the new card as well. And in this case, it was also possible to like manipulate some of the bytes. So it was also using like which particular employee ID is this and so on. So you can even modify that to have you log in as any other employee ID. Now, apart from BLE, the other important protocol is ZigBee, which is used by things like Philips Hue, SmartThings, like Samsung SmartThings, all of that. And the attack process stays the same. It's just that it differs in the terms of hardware. So this is just a short demo on the radio-based attack. So now, let's see if you can. So what we did initially was figure out which particular channel is a device based on or device located on. So using a tool called ZB Stumbler, we figured out that this is the channel where we are seeing a lot of beacon messages. And this is the Philips Hue device. So the very first thing that you'll do is capture the entire traffic during its normal mode of operation. So figure out that the channel is 20, give it an output capture name, specify that you need to capture 100 packets, and control the device first with your smartphone so that it is able to capture some of the valid packets. And once you have done that, you can simply replay those packets. So a lot of you who have Philips Hue in your home, you can try this out. So simply specify what is the PCAP that you want to replay, how much interval you want to give for each packet, and then how many packets you want to replay. And as soon as you hit start replay and have your Atmel RZ Raven dongle connected, which is a ZigBee sniffing tool, you'll see that it automatically, like you are able to control it no matter what given Philips Hue light bulb it is, or even whether it's not connected to the hub or, yeah. So even if it's not connected to the hub, you can still send it messages and control it, right? So yeah. So based on the same principle that Zigbee is like so vulnerable, 4 researchers from a university created a Zigbee worm, which actually takes a really good approach, not for the users, but for pen testing. So they built a drone which has all of this thing in it, and they can actually attack a particular Philips Hue automation system from 100 meters away. And 100 meters is a long distance, right? Let me see. Yeah. So fly your drone to some of the offices which have Zigbee devices and start replaying the packets. So yeah, so that is all for the talk. So actually moving into like the conclusion part, I just want to have like some of your inputs. Like how do you think these kind of security issues can be protected? Like what are your thoughts? Huh? No Wi-Fi? Yeah. Network segmentation is a really good fact, like really important point. So whenever you place IoT devices, make sure it's not on a network that you trust. Always have it on like a different network. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So IoT currently is like, yeah, it's so easy to hack IoT devices. Like it's as if like the developers were inviting you to hack into these devices. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah. Not yet. No, I haven't. Yeah. Yeah. So as a consumer, the only way to look at a device is to like go up online and see like whether it has been known to be vulnerable to any of the security issues. Apart from that, there is no other way to actually figure out whether this device is secure or not. So you have to make sure that the device offers you a bunch of flexibility, like changing the default credentials, making sure you can do firmware upgrade by yourself, and you yourself put it on like a different network and those kind of things. Yeah, yeah. Yep. So like all that we saw with like BLE dongle and all of that, you can also use Raspberry Pi. Also using Raspberry Pi, you can build your own hacking arsenal for IoT devices. So things like RaspB, which is for Zigbee exploitation. So you can use Raspberry Pi for all the exploitation, whatever we saw over here. Yeah. And with the things like Raspberry Pi Zero, it becomes much more better. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't actually hear you. Can you speak up again? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, so I have seen a number of devices which use like the Raspberry Pi kind of solution, so using the same Broadcom chip and all of that inside their own IoT device. And it ends up like it's not as same vulnerable or same secure as Raspberry Pi because you will ultimately add a lot of new components on it. So Raspberry Pi has like UART, JTAG, and all of that. So making sure that you remove all of that, making sure that you also add some of the tamper resistance and those kind of things. So Raspberry Pi is more like a hobbyist and a development utility that you can build your own electronics project. But if you use it in a commercial project, you always need to ensure that you have eliminated all the functionality which was originally meant for developers for easy access. Yeah. So yeah, so I know like Google is obviously doing a lot. Honeywell is also doing a lot in IoT security. Samsung is doing okayish, but devices like other consumer devices, D-Link, D-Link I don't personally like that much because they are like, a lot of their devices are easily vulnerable. You don't actually need to do anything. Also their like response time is so low and all of that. So yeah, there are some manufacturers which are taking it seriously. So whenever there is a new set of attack, you need to just look for whether they are offering firmware upgrades or not immediately, and the flexibility that they offer to you as a consumer. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So autonomous cars, even they have like a lot of different components in place. So it's not just the self-driving component, it's also the infotainment system and the other things that are included in it. And we have done like a lot of pen testing for infotainment systems which have like the same set of security issues. So it all depends on like from vendor to vendor how Ford is actually working on it, how other vendor is working on it. So yeah, so it's kind of like vendor specific. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've done firmware upgrade and segmentation of network. What else do you can do with that?
So as a consumer, not much. No, that's the sad truth. So whenever you buy IoT devices, always try to buy some like a major known one, which has been known to like be proactive to security. Don't go for like the $30 or $40 baby monitor, which you can find easily compared to like a $2 one. So invest in IoT security, make sure you get like good devices, because that is like a really critical piece in your entire smart home, right? So yeah, so that's all for this talk. You can reach out to me at this email address. The slides will be up at SecTor's website as well. You can also download it right now from here. This is the blog where we blog all the time on all the different security issues that we identify. And thanks again for coming. Thank you.